The Home Secretary has taken to the dispatch box today to talk about migration, and it was for the second time this week. Well, today, Shabana Mahmood announced the biggest shake-up the country has seen to the legal migration model in 50 years, they say. The changes will impact 2 million people who've arrived legally in the UK since 2021.
The applicant must have a clean criminal record. Secondly, they must speak English to A-level standard. Thirdly, they must have made sustained national insurance contributions. And finally, they must have no debt in this country. While these criteria set the bar that everyone must meet, there are a series of other tests that have today been published for consultation. And these either add or subtract from the 10-year qualifying period.
Well, let's take you through some of the key announcements in a little bit more detail now. The minimum period for getting indefinite leave to remain will be doubled from 5 to 10 years under these plans. But there are a series of just ignore that for a second. Let me talk you through this series of qualifications that will either reduce or increase that number. People who speak English to degree level could be eligible for indefinite leave to remain after 9 years. Those working as doctors, nurses or teachers, for example, could qualify after 5 years. Those with an income of £125,000 a year or more could qualify after 3 years. There we are. And on the flip side, there are also factors that could increase the period, like people who've received benefits for fewer than 12 months. They'd have to wait 15 years to get settlement. If they've received benefits for more than 12 months, it would be a 20-year wait. It's a lot to take in. Earlier, I sat down with the Migration Minister, Mike Tapp. The first question is, how much immigration does Britain need, do you think?
There's not a precise answer to that. It's about matching skills with foreign workforce. I mean, unfortunately, we have relied far too heavily on the foreign workforce. And, you know, one of the stats which I think is quite striking is 1 in 30 of people that live in the UK arrived in the last 4 years. That was a result of net migration being far too high and an over-reliance on foreign workforces, particularly low-skilled, and that undercuts British workers. So we're putting the brakes on, getting a grip of it and restoring that control and order.
Because you're talking about the Boris wave, as a lot of people call it, you know, getting on for net migration of almost 1 million. At the same time, you've got Reform UK saying they want net migration to be 0. Where's Labour in between those two numbers?
So where we are is restoring that order and control, having a system that functions, ensuring that our public services are running, ensuring that we're attracting the right people. It's about contribution and integration. And the reason for that, by the way, is because it's being used by some on the right particularly to cause division in our communities. And it's easy for them to do that because there's been that lack of integration and contribution from some. So by getting control of it, we essentially squash that argument so that we can unite the country again, because that's what we want to see.
I'm going to have to push you on this. That's a bit waffly. I mean, what does good look like? If you can't put some definition on the numbers, we saw Conservative governments previously saying the tens of thousands or 50,000. What does good look like with all of this if you can't say it's going to be X number coming here and they're going to be doing these kind of jobs, for example?
The reason we don't put numbers on it is because that tends to fail.
Because you're worried that you won't hit them.
Well, we've seen it fail in the past. So what we're looking at doing is ensuring the right people are coming, that we're compassionate and we help people, of course, and we saw that in the asylum statement on Monday.
Sure,
but ensuring people are contributing, that's what the country wants to see, so that's what we'll deliver.
Well, let's talk about the right people, because do you need high earners more than you need care workers? High earner, maybe a 3-year wait to get indefinite leave to remain. A care worker, 15 years wait.
Well,
who's more important here?
The health and social care visa, we've deliberately frozen that. And the reason we've done that is because there are 40,000 jobs available when Boris Johnson decided to experiment with this. That attracted then over 600,000. Now, I've been out on immigration enforcement visits and raids where I've met with people who came over on that visa, but the sponsors they were dodgy sponsors, and they end up having to work in car washes, for example, earning cash in hand and not being employed in that sector.
Yeah.
It's about attracting the right people, and that's why
So
we've
rich
said,
people are fine.
Look, what we've said is that if you are a high earner or coming over on a top global talent visa, then it will be quicker to settle here. But also NHS workers, teachers, for example. Now,
So they can get indefinite leave to remain in 3 years as well.
That'll be 5 years, and a lot of this is going to consultation.
Sorry, who's more important then? Why the difference?
It's about contribution.
It sounds like it's
and
about
integration.
salary.
But contribution isn't always about salary. Of course, we're setting the threshold for that. That came out in June. But we're making sure that people who come here are contributing. That doesn't necessarily mean high earner, but if you are a high earner and you're contributing to tax, for example, then that's really important. We're also saying that to earn settlement, you should pay national insurance for 3 years, because we need you to be paying into the system. That's what a fair system is to the British people. But of course, there's compassion as well, and that's why we're opening more safe and legal routes through the asylum statement which we saw on Monday. It's about being firm, but also being fair. That's what British values are, and that's what we're expected to deliver, and that's why we are.
Higher education sector is really struggling right now. We know that universities more and more are going to be in deficit. I think it's going to be 2/5 in the next 2 years. We see the likes of Nottingham University talking about getting rid of all of their language courses. Why? Because foreign students have paid for a lot of that. And now it seems like it's going to be harder for them, not only with them being allowed to stay for not as long after they graduate, but also we hear about a levy on foreign students potentially coming in the budget. Do you even care about university education anymore?
Well, I can't comment on anything in the budget, because we'll see that next week.
All right, but making it harder for students, that's in this.
In general, we have seen over the years far too many students coming over and then not completing their studies and then moving into low-skilled workers.
But let me just
we want to stop that.
But they're
Really
still paying for the study they do, and that helps domestic British students pay less for their courses. There's still a benefit of students coming in from abroad and paying more money, isn't there?
Well, the fact is here, if a student comes over to study, they need to complete their studies, and that's why we're sanctioning universities that don't have that completion rate. So that is important, because otherwise they disappear into low-skilled work, and that low-skilled work force that's coming from abroad is undercutting British workers. And of course, we've got millions who aren't in education or training, and they need to be filling these roles. So it's the responsibilities of employers too to recruit from within the UK.
As a Labour MP, did you think you'd be talking like this now? Because this stuff wasn't in the manifesto. There were stronger borders in the manifesto, illegal immigration, people coming over on small boats, but none of this. And really, people will look at this and think, you're doing this to head off reform. Are you doing this for our good, or are you doing it for the good of the elected Labour Party?
This was in the manifesto because it was about secure borders and an immigration system that functions, and not seeing British workers.
You weren't talking about this a year ago.
That was all in the manifesto. And now what we're doing is we're not here to please any political party anywhere on the political spectrum. And that's why what we've seen over the last week is firm but also fair, which is why there's compassionate routes, safe and legal routes for people to come over, so that we can help them when they need it, but also ensuring that we're attracting the right people. The British people say that. I've knocked on thousands of doors in my constituency who just want to see an immigration system that functions and that's fair, and that's what we're delivering.
We all know that you're trailing reform in the polls right now. This is the single issue they talk about the most.
And that's why we're solving it.
Because you're responding to reform.
No.
Who's driving the narrative there? Who's driving the agenda then? It doesn't seem like it's Labour.
The reason we're fixing this is, firstly, it's our moral duty to do so, because migrants, unfortunately, are being subjected to racism on the streets, and that's because this unfair system has let that happen. At the same time, some in politics are using this as a tool. So by making a fair system, bringing back that control and order means that we can unite again as Britain behind the flag, which is a great thing. I love our British values of tolerance and decency, but also firmness and strength. And without fixing this, that's difficult to do.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.